Okay, here we go. Something.
Welcome, everybody. It is time again for another episode of the Something Cast.
Something Cast.
I'm James Hatton.
I'm Podcast Rob.
And this took us an extra week.
It did.
Yeah.
Not that the listening audience knows that.
No, they have no idea. It's theater of the mind. But
giving you a peek behind the curtain. See how the sausage is made.
Well, what's even worse,
Something
right?
Cast sausage available at all fine restaurants.
Something
Oh my
sausage.
God.
Ooh, delicious.
Oh no.
We don't want to know what's in it.
Yeah, no.
Well, from the sound of the voices, Rob, why don't you introduce our stellar guest panel?
We have the lovely ladies of the Silver Screams podcast on with us tonight. They have been on here before. Number 3 in your programs, number 1's in your hearts. We have Megan Salinas and Katie Cullen with us this evening.
Woo,
Hi, all my buddies. How you doing?
I wish we had a soundboard. I'd put
Hey,
applause.
everybody.
We'll have to have our audio guy add something in post.
Damn it. Why do we do that to me?
Sounds good.
So this episode, you messaged me about it like right after I guess it was like, I don't know, the day after the announcement, and I was like, yep, I'm in. We watched it last night. It's happening.
Yeah, during the sports ball championship.
Yeah, the Superb Owl.
I think this is one of the most exciting commercials during this year's Super Bowl, and I'm one of those people that watches the game and the commercials fairly equally, despite the fact that I didn't really have two dams to rub together about the teams that were playing this year. And so this trailer dropping during, I want to say, the first quarter, just everyone at the party we were at was like, what is this? When is it coming out? Oh my God, it's coming out tonight? Yes!
I received
Yeah,
it.
I had been. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go for it.
I was going to say that I had been sort of keeping an eye on some Cloverfield news. I don't necessarily follow the ARG stuff and all the viral marketing super closely, but I do like to sort of keep an eye on it. And so I knew that there was going to be a movie coming out called Cloverfield, the God Particle this year. But like I was pretty shocked seeing the actual Super Bowl commercial. And it was really funny because I had to leave the game for a little bit to go record for AfterBuzz, and I was chit-chatting with one of my co-hosts while we were getting set up, and I was like, I'm going to go back to the party, and then I'm going to go home and watch Cloverfield Paradox. And he was like, wait, watch what? And I was like, oh, did you not see? And I had to explain to him the movie commercial had dropped, and he was like, oh my God, I need to go and watch that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't watch the sports balls. Just I don't pay attention to it. It's not, nothing against it. Just doesn't tickle me. And the next day I'll see any of the commercials that sort of blow people away. So I got a Facebook message from a friend of mine, probably about an hour before the show. There was an article on some nerd blog that said that it might be happening tonight. So I was like, do I have to watch the Super Bowl? Nope. Somebody will message me because they know I love Cloverfield. So lo and behold, they said at the first quarter or whatever, it's coming tonight. Me and my girlfriend stayed up. We actually watched the riff tracks of the original Cloverfield just to pre-prep. And then by the time we were done with that, game stopped, game was over, and we threw the movie on right then and there.
How is the riff tracks of the original Cloverfield? That's one I haven't tried yet.
It's fun. It's I wouldn't say it's one of their best ones, but it's definitely for a shaky cam movie that doesn't have a ton of depth. It's definitely a good night.
Is it the best night ever?
Other than a giant monster tromping through New York City. Could be.
Is it a better night than the people in the movie are having?
Well,
that's not a high bar.
Yeah, we're setting it low.
No, not even remotely.
That is the lowest of bars.
Yeah, I was actually at a Super Bowl party, and when that commercial came up and it said, when the coming soon was coming up, but it was coming very soon. You could hear like the proverbial needle getting dragged across the record as everybody at party was like, "Wait, what? What does that mean?" And then phones were pulled out and gasps were heard as people were holding up their phones to other people on their phones that showed Netflix having the immediately after the game thing. So it was.
I would have.
I dare say there was more excitement seeing that than I had after watching the movie. But we'll get into that. For those of you who may not have guessed, we are discussing the Cloverfield Paradox this
which
evening.
was a Tide ad.
Oh,
God
dude,
damn it.
those were the
were
best
great.
commercials of the entire Super Bowl because you kept waiting for that other shoe to drop in every commercial and just have David Harbour show up and just kind of shake his head slowly like, nope, it's a Tide commercial.
I was very surprised that they did not use the opportunity to comment on the whole Tide Pod thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, you're in the spotlight already. We might as well make a commercial that's like, this is for eating, and then like have it be a bowl of chips, and this is for washing, and have it be a Tide Pod, just like some stupid PSA or something. I'm surprised they didn't take advantage of that.
I have to assume that they have to hand those commercials in well ahead of time. Like they have to be, I don't know, checked for properness. Because I thought the same thing. Like, how come they're not? When I heard Tide had a huge advertising binge, I was like, oh, they're just playing on that Tide Pod thing. But maybe it was just too recently that it had started up, or that it became sort of pop culture-y. I don't know. Or they just realized that Tide was in people's minds.
I'm not sure. It could very well just be that they're like, I mean, we all look at the Tide Pod thing as like a big joke, but I really do wonder what it is like on the Tide side of things, of whether they take it all in good humor and stride, with the PSA stuff that they released, or if they're legitimately like, I can't believe this is like the most like exposure we've gotten in a long time, is because it was a small sample size that got blown up because of the internet. So I don't know how they view it if they view it with good humor or not.
Well, and the whole thing, now there are pictures of people taking pictures of their detergent aisle in their local grocery store or whatever, and all of the pod detergent is in locked cases, and they're saying, look at what you did, you made them lock down the Tide Pods. They've been doing that for years because they're so easily stolen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a Tide Pod thing. It's a security measure that's been in place for forever. Everyone's just noticing it now.
I tend to think that Tide may have thought there's a very small section of the world that is eating Tide Pods, but there's probably a much larger section of the world watching the Super Bowl, and they didn't want to have anybody go, people are eating Tide Pods. Wonder what that tastes like, and like suddenly trying it because they're bringing attention to it. So let's just not even bring it up. Let's just kind of pretend it doesn't exist. We'll do our PSAs and everything, but not during the time frame where there's arguably 30 million people watching TV.
That is a good point.
It is their fault for making them so delicious, really.
Yeah.
Yes, tiny little murder capsules. Like cyanide, but it won't fit in your tooth. Anyway.
Anyway, aren't we here to talk about a movie and not Tide Pods?
We are.
All people dying in ways that aren't detergent related.
James, before we get started, do you have a sponsor you'd like to talk about?
I do. We are brought to you by one of our sponsors is Audible.com. If you go to audible.com/something, you can get 30 days of all of the Audible funness that is available to you. That means a free audiobook and all of the discounts that Audible provides. Again, that is audible.com/something. And
we are also sponsored by Quixotic Games, developer and publisher of Dungeon Alliance. This is a collectible card dungeon crawl game that can support 1 to 4 players. It's a deck building game. You draft your own team of 4 heroes, build your deck, and attempt to conquer the dungeon that changes via layout every time you play it. The game has rules for competitive play, cooperative play, and solo play. can be found where all fine hobby shops have their games, and also online. You can also check it out and order it through quixoticgames.com.
And if you have a local hobby store, make sure to ask them for Quixotic Games to get them in, and then play them, because they're good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Not gonna lie, I
Awesome.
legitimately thought you were gonna make a joke about Tide being a sponsor. But no, that game sounds
but
like a
I did
blast.
refrain from when James said all the benefits that you get for being an Audible member. I did refrain from and all the pods you can eat.
You know, the things that your sponsors won't appreciate in the middle of their copy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, that game does sound super fun.
Oh, there's actually you can find playthroughs online where one of the game review sites has been going through like a 4 or 5 stage process of playing the game. So there's rules based on you move your heroes, and then based on what cards you draw, those are how the bad guys move, and there's rules governing those. So it's not like you can cheat and say, well, all of the bad guys are frightened of me, so they all run away and I get everything. It's really cool. We've known Andy for quite a while. He's put out some awesome games through Quixotic and through other companies who've licensed stuff from him. But yeah, I would definitely check out the videos because I think it's something you guys would find really interesting.
All right.
That being said, the third chapter of the Cloverfield franchise, Cloverfield Paradox.
We're going to start with like sort of overarching opinions, or are we just going to dive into the nuances?
However, your call.
Overarching's probably a good way to start.
You've got the stick, James.
Fair enough. I'm going to start off with I liked it. I think I bought into the real hype of it that night. I was super like, oh, I got something to do, and there's this big science fiction movie, and it's a big set piece movie, and I love Abrams mostly, as has been previously argued about on the show. There are things about
I
Abrams.
feel like I love J.J. Abrams always requires a footnote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's original Cloverfield really enjoyed. Lost hit or miss. Ship of Theseus great. Anyway, we could Star Trek can shove it. So, but yeah, so I bought into it that night, and
Yep.
I really was just like, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. By the end of it, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to deny. I'm sure I could rewatch it and still enjoy it. But I think some of its flaws. It has its flaws, and I'm sure we'll get into them. But on the average scale, I think I liked it more than the average, but I'm not so blind to see that it wasn't like the perfect film. But as far as the sales of it, like the way they put it out there, you can't beat it. It was a cool adventure to have on one random night in the middle of the country. It was good. Rob?
I'll let Katie or Megan chime in first.
Sure, hit it.
God bless this ridiculous movie. I love it, but it is not terribly smart. There are so many parts of this movie that were so much fun to watch, and I personally have a lot of really weird nostalgia with Cloverfield because I started a game of my own with my friends based on the initial movie. Like, the movie came out 1/18/08, and then we started on February 6th, and that was 10 years ago. So when this came out, we all went, oh my God, we have to watch it. Got on Discord and watched it together a couple of days after because that was our only time slot where it worked for everyone. And so part of my enjoyment of this movie was this conversation with these friends that I've known for a decade and have this nostalgia with, just talking about, oh my God, they're talking about multiverses. They made our game canon. This is insane. I love everything. Wow, that was really weird. Like, that's definitely part of it, and that definitely colors my opinion of the movie. That said, the character writing and the acting in this were phenomenal. So good. It was just when we got to here's a weird thing that's happening. Why is it happening? We don't know, but it is. Like, it was trying to stitch the pieces together where the movie made its biggest mistakes. It's, let's have these nice spectacle trailer moments, but then not actually bother trying to fit them into the logic of the world. And that was the biggest issue, is here's this fun, shiny thing. It doesn't fit. but it's here. But no, the characters, the acting, the writing for them were all fantastic. So I really enjoyed this movie, and I enjoyed watching it the second time around. But I'm not going to stand here and say that it's a great movie, because it really has issues.
I'm with you.
I have to agree with a lot of that. The best way I sum up this movie, and it's something I've said while watching it for a second time, and something that I say to people when I'm talking to them about it, is the movie is great except for when it's not. And I really feel like you can feel the points where the Cloverfield franchise was crowbarred into this otherwise original script. And I feel like it worked a lot better. And we'll get into a little bit more nitty-gritty with it, but I feel like this movie felt like it had to overcorrect for 10 Cloverfield Lane only being loosely tied to the original. In literally like the loosest of sense, like sort of just Easter egg sense. This movie felt like it had to tie things back in a little bit more concretely, and in doing so, the overall story was weakened because of it. That being said, there's so much of this movie that is effective at building suspense, at building drama, at making you feel a lot of connection with these characters. There's so much in this movie that's done right, which makes the parts of the movie that are done poorly or executed in a way that is less effective all the more disappointing. It makes those bits stand out immensely. So it's one of those things, like I said, I very much enjoyed it. But, like, man, is it great except for when it decides not to be.
And I have a feeling we're going to hear the full-on dissenting opinion, Mr. Rob.
So, when I got done watching this movie, I watched it the first time, and the next day I watched it again just because I wasn't quite sure exactly what I had absorbed the day before versus what I was expecting it to be. I really get the sense that J.J. Abrams listens to our podcast on the sly, because I really felt that part of this movie was, oh, they tore Lost apart? Here, hold my beer. There was, it felt to
You
me
have no idea
like
how
a
much you're
monorail
speaking to me right
ride
now.
at Disney World or a D&D adventure with a bad DM, because there was so much shit in this movie that happened where any sane person would have like grabbed the nearest chair or crowbar and fended everybody else off like a scene from The Thing and said, hold the fuck on for a second. But nobody did. They had to rush to the next thing. They had to... There's a woman that suddenly and magically appears not only in your walls, but integrated into your circuitry. And there was not 4.5 hours of hold the fuck up after they got her out of the wall. It was just, we're on to the next thing, where there was so much like forgiveness for all the stuff that was happening by the characters in the movie, that a lot of it just felt like, okay, I'm not even gonna argue any points. I'm just along for the ride. I'm like a guy in the back of the taxi just watching what's happening and like I'm not connected to anything that's happening in front of me. It was interesting. I don't think it worked at all. I didn't. There were some cool acting parts. I will give it that. I thought the husband was phenomenal. I like Daniel Bruhl. He's becoming one of my guilty pleasure actors to watch. But yeah, I couldn't get behind that it was a good movie. Normally when we name our episodes, we put the name of our show in there somewhere. So originally I was thinking the Something Paradox, but I left it as the Cloverfield Something because I'm just really not sure what the fuck this movie was.
That's the biggest problem. Is that the biggest problem is that this is a franchise doesn't know what it wants to be. When it decided to be a standalone monster movie, it was fine, but then, 8 years later, it decides it wants to be an anthology series and, ride that franchise, extended universe wave. And then when that movie was, I guess some people complained that it was too standalone. They decided to, bend over backwards to make this one tie in to the detriment of the overall narrative. And now I'm looking at 10 Cloverfield Lane and going, wow, you were the best. You were the best by comparison. Can we go back to being more standalone at least?
Well,
Yeah, I had
having found the original script for the God Particle, Cloverfield Paradox is a better movie than the original God Particle script. Like, that one had nothing to offer in terms of plot, character, anything.
Do you guys know anything about the original script?
Only that it was...
No, but I would still love to see it, even after what I've seen of Paradox.
And I knew that it was a purchased script that was reworked to fit. And from what I understand, 10 Cloverfield Lane was too, but that's really the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, they both were.
Yeah.
They sort of go the Hellraiser avenue, where after a while you just start taking completely unrelated scripts and making them a part of your franchise to varying degrees of success. With 10 Cloverfield Lane, I feel like it did work a lot better. Katie is absolutely right, though. Basically, everything we've been able to gather about the original God Particle script, it was a far weaker film. It was a suspense film that took place in space that didn't have any supernatural elements. It was like it was trying to play off of the ideas of paranoia and everything like that, but it didn't have any sort of supernatural elements to it, which you could argue makes it more grounded. On the other hand, there was far less compelling stuff in it. The Hybrid Network did a video on, those are guys on YouTube, they did a kind of beat-by-beat rundown of the original script, if anybody's interested in sort of listening to that and see what the original story was like, because the original story played a lot more off of the paranoia and
it was incredibly xenophobic.
Nations. Yes. Our main characters were American, and they come across, they lose the Earth like they do at the beginning of this movie, but they come across another spaceship that happens to be the European sort of nations, and there's a war going on, and it doesn't really have anything relevant to say about our current state of affairs in terms of our relations with the rest of the world. Yeah, I kind of have to agree with Katie. It just sort of, it sounds like if there is that commentary and there is that subtext, it sounds like it's more on the xenophobic side of things.
Yeah, listening through their rundown of the script, it sounded like a whole lot of nothing. It's a space suspense thriller that we would have all seen done before and done better. So as far as I'm concerned for that, from what I heard about God Particle, Cloverfield Paradox is a better movie just by dint of having better, more interesting characters, by having people of color and women, which kind of tells you what that other script was like. Just, again, the cast and the character writing on this was so incredibly strong that for me, it made up with a lot of the issues with the big set piece scenes and the big horror scenes not working as well, because we had all of these characters and because their voices in the script were fantastic and because they were so well acted. Like, I can forgive a lot about a movie if I give a damn about the people, and I can forgive a lot about a movie if I give a damn about the story. If it has neither of those things, we'll forget that movie. Who cares? Cloverfield Paradox, for me, definitely had the people and had about 70% of the story. So I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. The things, I think, watching it, even my girlfriend and I were like, hey, that's the thing. Hey, that's aliens. Oh, wow, that's Pandorum. There was a lot of nods to other movies and doing them only one half step as good as the source material. So, you know,
Yeah, when you're making Event Horizon comparisons and going, man, this is like Event Horizon, but not as effective. There's a little bit of a problem.
Not as effective, I think, being the key words, because I love Event Horizon.
Oh, I love it too, but it's dumb.
It's dumb, but Lawrence Fishburne has, like, realistic reactions. Cloverfield Paradox.
Oh, yeah, no, it's great.
Dude, number one, the dude loses his arm in a wall, and there's not, like, you know, gallons of blood everywhere, number one. I'm like, okay. And then 10 minutes later, the dude's arm comes crawling down the hallway, and the one-armed guy is just going, huh, that's kind of weird.
See, I actually really love that Mundy was one of my absolute favorite characters, partially because Chris O'Dowd can do no wrong.
Oh, he's amazing.
And partially because he was this great understated comic relief that we really needed. That conversation with Volkov about Kentucky and Kansas.
That was probably my favorite line of the entire movie.
Oh my God, it was hysterical, and it made them seem very much human. It's like, dude, you're Irish. Why do you care about Kansas? But still hilarious, and just him having these really understated, possibly in shock, possibly rolling with the punches reactions to everything, actually helped sell it for me. Because if everyone's freaking out and panicking all the time, if we're all acting like Volkov, that doesn't help. But having a slew of people, having a slew of different coping mechanisms and a slew of different reactions was incredible for me. The one scene where the captain, whose name is escaping me, right after everything goes to hell, there's just that scene of him sitting in his bunk and crying and then pulling himself together and getting back on with life. And that, to me, is one of the best scenes in the movie. It's this very quiet little human moment of, okay, he knows it's awful. He knows everything is just posed, but he's the captain and he has to get his people home. Just that, again, it's moments like that. It's character bits. That's what made me love the movie.
There definitely were some small glimmers of acting brilliance. That scene when they realize they've lost the Earth and Hamilton runs down the hallway to try to make a phone call and it doesn't connect.
Yes.
Volkov's still thing. Like his response to Mundy about it, like, oh, we're not in Kentucky anymore. Kansas, really? Who gives a fuck? Like
people in Kansas.
Yeah, but his response felt realistic to me. Like, really, this is going on, and you're going to correct my idiom? That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, the movie is absolutely littered with wonderful character bits that really do add life and an extra dimension to this story. But to your point, Rob, I think you kind of touched on the crux of the problem with the movie, is that in order for and I was talking to somebody else about this earlier today, Katie and I, when we were watching it a second time, we had to bend over backwards to connect the dots to go, okay, well, why is his arm acting this way? Okay, we have to assume that there's more than two dimensions at play here than if that's the case. And then we're like, okay, well, are we dealing with an infinite universe? Because clearly this can't be the arm from the universe that they've collided with, because that Mundy is dead because that satellite has already crashed. And so this must be a third arm from another universe where they've already found the gyro thing that ended up in Volkov. Like, otherwise, why else would it be taking, how did it become sentient otherwise? The answer is that it can't be sentient. It has to be from another universe. Because if it is sentient, that opens up an entirely different can of space worms.
That may or may not wind up.
So it's one of those things where, as we're discussing it and trying to connect the dots, it made me realize, I was like, this movie is making you do homework to make sense of its story. And as I described it to somebody earlier today, I can't tell if that's the movie giving enough credit to its audience to be able to connect the dots, or if that's just really bad storytelling. And if I'm asking myself that question, it's probably bad storytelling.
Yeah, I have to agree. I tend to like me some J.J. Abrams. I don't think I like the person that J.J. Abrams thinks he is, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like I like Shyamalan stuff, but I don't like the stuff that Shyamalan thinks he believes about him stuff, about how good he is.
At which point,
I completely agree with what you said, Megan. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, I don't know if they're trying to be super intelligent and let the audience figure it out for themselves, or they just didn't write a really good story.
And if
I think it's the latter.
It has to be.
Yeah,
the whole compass thing. I am not a small individual. That compass is the size of a volleyball. This Russian dude was what, $130 soaking wet? How do you not go, what the hell is in your chest? Like it would look like he swallowed a head that was sticking out of his chest. How does that even fit in there? How does it fit in there alone, much less with all the worms that were inside of him too? There was just so much stuff that you had to say, okay, whatever, and just let it go.
Yeah, and
that's what I mean by the weird sci-fi horror set piece scenes that don't quite work. Like, why did we have worms on a space station? Well, the script answer is so they could wind up inside of Volkov and then things would happen. That's a nice script answer. What's the in-universe answer for having a worm colony on a space station?
Yeah.
And it never really comes up. They establish it in the montage, and then we get the worms are gone, and then we have Volkov doing the eye thing and listening to a voice that the audience can't hear, and then exploding in worms. Like, when it tries to go horror, it fails. Because it touches its toe into horror and goes, oh, I think that's scary enough. I think that'll work. Well, why did it happen? It doesn't matter. It'll just scare the audience. It's fine. So we went for spectacle over substance, and then tried to tie the spectacle back into the substance, and that just... Nope. And it's like stitching sequins onto... This metaphor is going to leave me.
on top of that...
It's like stitching sequins onto your event horizon.
Yes, your sparkly, sparkly event horizon.
And after you've tied all of that together for the sake of the horror spots of the movies, you then sort of have to try and fit that shape into a whole that's connected to the Cloverfield universe, which is another sort of, pardon a bag of worms as well.
Yep. That's a whole other Volkov.
Yeah. Can of Volkov. But so I love that you also had the same thoughts I did about the arm, Chris O'Dowd's arm, because my mid-movie can he control his arm wherever it is? Does his arm do things for other people now, or did it blow up in other world?
Somewhere in another universe, there is an arm that is just sitting there giving someone the finger because that's what he was thinking of.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think he was controlling it at all, because if he was controlling it, he wouldn't have to tell somebody, hey, give my severed arm a marker. It's trying to tell us something.
Right, but
he would have just said it.
At the same time, though, that means that the other Chris O'Dowd in the other universe with the other missing arm was doing that. Like
that other universe might have rules that we don't know about. They could have very different physics. They could have... I love playing with multiverse theory. It's so much fun. It doesn't fix the problems here, but I love it.
Well, also, for me, the only way it makes sense is infinite universe theory, which again would allow them so many opportunities for sequels, because it's only with infinite universes that I can think of where there's a universe where Mundy and the rest of his crew, seeing him lose his arm, have already come to the conclusion that multiverse stuff is happening, and go, hey, maybe we can give that universe a message, or maybe they also got an arm from another universe where it was giving a message, and so they're like, oh, we should do the same. Mundy, let that, whatever universe your arm is in, know that it's in Volkov's stomach. Like I said, the only way that makes sense to me is not only multiverse theory, but infinite universe theory.
And that also means that there are multiple
not to get all
universes
Rick and Morty on it. Yeah.
in which the Russian has swallowed the compass. somehow.
Or where it's ended up in his stomach, because that's the problem when with this movie is it falls back on everything is caused by interdimensional chaos of them lighting up this particle and crashing these two universes together. It can literally, like, the movie uses that to explain everything that doesn't make sense. For better or worse, that's, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'd argue that there are some things that can explain, like the gyro winding up inside of Volkov, and the worms winding up inside of Volkov, and Jensen winding up inside the wall. Things like that, where there's something here where it shouldn't be, or something is misplaced, or something is wrong, like Jensen getting put into the crew photo, or the communications logs being the ones from this dimension as opposed to the ones from their home dimension. Like, I'm down for those explanations. That makes sense. But the ship trying to eat Mundy's arm, and then good God, the putty just trying to kill him, and the ship springing a water leak and killing Tam. Like, the points where it goes more Event Horizon, the people that the ship is just bound and determined to murder, but everyone else is okay.
Even those things, well, except for the ship trying to kill Mundy, that I don't get. But like, even those other things, you could argue are the result of the universe sort of trying to correct itself. Like the place that Mundy was patching up happened to be the place where Jensen ended up in the wall. So you could argue that happens to be a point in the dimension where the I guess the connection is tenuous, or there happens to be a tear, like a universal tear there, which is why she ended up there, and it's also why when he got too close, his arm disappeared and flew into another dimension. So that I can also sort of justify the ship killing Tam because she wasn't on the ship in the universe where Jensen came from. So you could make the argument that the ship or the universe, because I don't want to give sentience to the ship because this isn't Event Horizon, but you could make the argument that the universe was trying to correct itself by going, she's not supposed to be here, and it killing her as a result of that. Again,
but that argument falls apart when you get the sentient putty that eats Mundy. Like, that's the point where it's like, even our own internal logic has gone straight out the window. We just wanted a creepy scene.
That scene bothered me so much. I don't care that they didn't explain why the wall suddenly became magnetic and was pulling all the tools towards it. It set up the fact that it was pulling that metallic nano putty off the wall. So the scene I'm seeing play out in my head as I'm watching this movie is Mundy suddenly
it's going to impale him, right?
Going to get speared by like 19 little magnetic nano things and pinned to the far wall. But what does it do? It grabs him and pulls him back in the opposite direction that everything metal in the room has suddenly flown in. So and even when they were trying to make cool scenes, they like somehow managed to just screw it up and do it wrong.
And then the movie's going, didn't we subvert your expectations? And it's like, well, yeah, but you did it in a way that didn't make sense.
Yeah, and then we're back to, here is a great big set piece scene. It doesn't fit in with our internal logic. You can throw all the weird stuff at me that you want, but make it fit with your logic.
And even my argument just now about the ship trying to correct itself by killing Tam, well, Hamilton's not supposed to be on the ship either. She's on Earth. This universe has two Hamiltons, and it's allowing that to happen.
But Megan, she's the protagonist. She has plot armor.
out of all of the characters, you could argue that, like, because the captain and Monk and Mundy and Volkov and Schmidt, I believe his name is Schmidt, right?
Yes.
That all their counterparts died when the ship crashed. So you could argue that the universe going, oh, all of these people, that checks out. That makes sense. But there are 2 Tams in this universe now. Like, how on earth was she, or no, there are 2, Avas, there are 2 Hamiltons in this universe now. How was she, our protagonist, allowed to exist when, I guess, Tam didn't get a pass? So even my own argument completely falls apart.
Yeah, it gets very Final Destination-y very quickly.
Oh, I feel like Final Destination makes more... The OG Final Destination makes a little bit more sense. That's a simple premise that I can grasp.
In hindsight, after I saw this movie multiple times to try to find something that I could connect in my brain and go, okay, this redeems this movie. This makes it make sense.
You're looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah. I think the thing with Donald Logue's Stambler, the whole interview thing that they're having right in the beginning of the movie that they tell him to turn off, I think that probably aggravated me the most because it felt like the movie is giving you an excuse right at the very beginning. You know, like if you read a restaurant review and somebody's reviewing an Italian restaurant, but they don't like Italian, and they start off by going, now, I'm not really a guy who hates Italian, and then completely goes on to bash an Italian restaurant. When this movie says, if they throw that switch, weird shit might happen that nobody's going to be able to explain, and it's going to be their fault, and then they throw the switch, well, now we don't have to try to explain everything, because we just told you that if you throw the switch, weird shit that nobody can explain is going to happen. So here's a bunch of shit we're not going to explain.
Apparently, this scene was used in the viral marketing leading up to this particular movie's release. And this scene in and of itself contains 2 Easter eggs tying to other Cloverfield movies. One in particular, 10 Cloverfield Lane. Have you guys already heard what those connections are?
Well, I know that they share the same last name, so they're assuming that there's some sort of relation between John Goodman's character and Donald Logue's character. And the chick, but here's the other thing too, the chick giving the interview, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying that the going theory is that they're potentially brothers because John Goodman's character worked for the Tagarado Corporation, and so like it's kind of funny too because you can see the Tagarado logo a couple times in this movie, usually in a scene that's about to infuriate you with how little it makes sense, like the aforementioned Mundy scene. But you're right. The woman also giving the interview, she was also in 10 Cloverfield Lane as the woman trying to get into the bunker at one point in time.
As someone who spent a good chunk of time neck deep and sinking in the viral marketing around the original Cloverfield movie, I love that Tagarado just keeps coming back. Because they're one of those corporations that once they put their thumbprints on something, you know that awful, awful stuff is going to happen. And I love that for all of this, oh, hey, this person works for Tagarado. Oh, well, we're fucked. You said their name, now we're going to die. It's like saying Macbeth in a theater.
It's like Weyland-Yutani and the Aliens, and it's like the Hanzo Corporation in Lost. It's that oh no.
And Pentax
now that we
for
found
the
their name, bad shit's going to happen.
Oh, wait, Tagarado built the satellite? Oh, wait, Tagarado owns Slusho? Oh, wait, John Goodman worked for Tagarado? Well, that's it, kids. Pack it up and go home. At least 70% of us are going to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Talking about Lost comparisons, there's a hot second in the original Cloverfield at the very, very beginning of the movie where just for the briefest of moments after the bar's in town, basically, the logo for the Dharma Initiative is visible for just like a couple frames. And so, of course, I found that out, and I was like, J.J. Abrams, you son of a bitch! Because if the Dharma Initiative exists within the same potential universe, or I guess at this point multiverse, that the Tagarado Corporation exists, then while the Cloverfield monster is attacking New York, there's a bunch of people time traveling on an island somewhere. The universe is chaos. That's what I'm hearing from J.J. Abrams' point of view, is that if all of this weird stuff is going on all at the same time, the universe is chaos, and I think we have Hamilton to blame.
But I love that we have the same corporation in at least three separate dimensions. I'm sure that it will show up in Overlord when that happens. And in at least three separate dimensions, they have managed to completely screw the pooch, or at least have a hand in it. Like, God bless, you guys are terrible at whatever you think your job is.
Yeah, it gets very fringe with the applied dynamics being in both places and having different skill sets in both, but both of them semi-evil.
And Slusho is in Fringe.
Oh, you're right, it is.
Yep. And in the new Star Trek. So, fucking Tagarado, man.
Fringe, it's in Star Trek. That's the weird thing, is to think that Tagarado persists into the distant future.
I think that might be the one dimension where they didn't fuck it up.
I do like the fact, Katie, that you brought up that everybody has to assume that each movie is a separate dimension. They do not all exist in the same plane of existence, because if she is the same person, the one who was trying to get into the bunker in 10 Cloverfield Lane and the one who did the interview, there's a significant time difference between those two, because Paradox takes place in 2028 and 10 Cloverfield Lane is still
at least 12 years.
Current-ish time.
2016, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And
that's a 12-year time difference.
And that's why I like that we've opened up multiverse theory as the binding glue, I guess, behind this franchise, that we don't have to sit here and go, well, how does this fit with the other movies? We can just go, it's in the Cloverfield multiverse. It's almost like doing Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt or something. You don't expect every single story to be happening concurrently or in the same place or whatever. You just accept that it's a Twilight Zone episode, so it's going to be a story that's a little creepy. And for Cloverfield, you just kind of accept it's a Cloverfield movie. There's going to be some weird stuff happening. 70% of the cast is going to die, and there's a 50% chance of giant monsters.
Well,
I'm okay
I think
with
the
this.
thing that concerns me the most is that Abrams has apparently said that he does have a plan as to how all these movies all connect.
We've heard that
the same
before.
Thing. And when I read that, I kind of shook my finger at the computer monitor and said, "We have heard this from you before, Mr. Abrams,
Yes.
much to our pain and chagrin."
I was going to say, is that the
If
same
it's
plan he had for
purgatory
Lost?
again.
Yeah, well, or it's his, it could be his magic box bullshit where I'm going to tell you I have an answer for everything and it's all going to get explained, and just to draw people away from what they're trying to think about.
That's all smoke and mirrors.
He has a really good point in terms of what in the box could never ever match up to your imagination of what could be in the box. That's one of the reasons why people who know how to utilize that sort of mentality in horror are so effective, because the horror you see on screen never really fully will live up to the horror your own imagination can create for you. But at a certain point, you got to show the monster. At a certain point, you have to give the audience something.
But if he is aware of that, he should just not be telling us that the box exists. Like, we have these movies in the Cloverfield franchise. Don't sit there and tell us that you have a way in your magic box to put them together. Don't tell us this, because we're going to have expectations, and we're just going to think you're an idiot.
Yeah,
Here's the thing.
You're here. Yes.
Though, Here's the thing, though, is that he doesn't care about actually meeting those expectations. All he cares about is getting your attention and allowing your imagination to do the rest. J.J. Abrams, and maybe I'm speaking for, I've never actually met the man. I'm sure he's very nice, but he always seemed to me to be the type of person that was really good. And I'm doing a rewatch of Lost right now for a podcast. But he always seemed to me to be the type of person that was really good with coming up with ideas. Like, the ideas he came up with were really great, but you ask him to follow through on those ideas and he'll either be like, well, the explanation isn't very interesting, or he'd be too distracted because in the time that you took the spoke to ask him to fully explain this other idea, he had already come up with ideas for the next project and was already running in that direction. And so, in the case of Lost, you're leaving people with a lot of loose ends and, that need to be tied up. Meanwhile, he's running off to Cloverfield and he's running off to Fringe, and Lost is still going, hey, we need answers and we need to tie all these up. And he's like, oh, yeah, you do you. I have full faith in you guys. You'll tie it all together. Bye.
Yeah, let's not forget. Forget this is the guy who released video footage of a drone flying onto the set of The Force Awakens and flying underneath the Millennium Falcon to look up and see the Batmobile mounted under the Millennium Falcon with no dialogue, no text, no why the hell are you doing this? Just to kind of piss people off and wonder why the hell this is happening.
See, now that's hilarious. But he's a stage magician who sets up a really good show and has a really good fanfare and a really good opening and never manages to pull anything out of the hat.
Yeah, at the end he goes, is this your card? And you kind of say yes because you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
He's the magician from the Geico commercial. It's not a Geico commercial. It's a scratch-off lottery commercial. Have you seen that?
I can't say I have.
He's
might
got
be a local commercial. We get different ones, I think.
It's a very bad magician in like an Elks Lodge. There's like 6 people in the audience. It's the woman inside the box, and then he opens up each door separately, and the box is empty. And then inside the box, you hear a woman go, yes! Because she won a scratch off, and everybody starts booing, and the magician goes, sometimes we hear voices from beyond. It could happen as he's wheeling the cabinet off the stage. That's J.J. Abrams' thought process.
So I did want to mention, because there's one thing I saw in the movie that I don't think either I'm completely wrong, or it was just one of those things people didn't notice, that the video of Otherworld, where they're talking about the space station falling into the sea, looked remarkably like the satellite at the end of Cloverfield 1 falling into the sea. Has that, like... Oh,
I'm sure that was the point.
And I think my problem with the connections started there, because it's obviously, unless this multiverse has very different timelines, that means that the Cloverfield movie that number 1 that we're aware of had a space station in it, or this is sort of a fixed moment in time where shit falls into the ocean.
I think it was mostly just a reference to the first film.
Sure.
I don't necessarily think that it meant to fit in that particular timeline.
I disagree. Because, and I did a little bit of deep diving in terms of listening to Thor, like theory and lore videos, because I, much like everybody else who watched this movie, wanted to go like, what did it mean? I need it to make sense. I need all of these things that don't make sense to make sense and fit into these nice little boxes that I have in my brain. So, like, when one of the theories that I came across was that and this ties into the next upcoming film as well, was that when Hamilton and team flipped this switch, that not only did they create dimensional chaos in space, and, they also did it in time. So, in the theory goes that they caused the satellite crash into that, like, by flipping that switch, it ripples through time across multiple dimensions. It causes aliens to attack what the universe in 10 Cloverfield Lane. It caused the satellite to fall in the universe from the 2006 Cloverfield, which, woke up the monster and caused chaos in that way. Because the monster was living underneath the ocean, and we still don't know where that came from. If that came from aliens, or if it was just a primitive creature, we don't know. At this point, anything is game. It could be witchcraft for all we know. And I don't know how much you guys have heard about the next upcoming movie, but the next upcoming movie, Overlord, is a World War II period piece where soldiers are fighting not only Nazis, but in quote unquote supernatural forces. So unless the World War II movie happens to take place in another universe where just its own isolated set of supernatural goings on happens to be happening, which again, and kind of, you could do a movie about that if it didn't tie into Cloverfield. The only other way to really make it tie in is if it's directly tied to either the Tagarado Corporation, another monster that we have yet to see, or if it's the direct result of this, interdimensional, intertime ripple sort of effect causing chaos across multiple dimensions, across multiple points in time.
I think that's what they're going to end up using this movie as. It's going to be a jumping off point and a reason for every movie to be like a different season of American Horror Story.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have to connect everything together, but it's all because they flipped the switch, and that outward ripple effect, like you said, went through space, went through time, went through dimensions, and just basically wrecked everything. So we can always go back and say, well, why are there... All they have to do is, like you said, either show the corporation or have a quick clip of a similar kind of monster, either from 10 Cloverfield Lane or from Paradox or the original, to show that that was the root cause when they flipped that switch, like the universe as a whole, past, present, future, sideways, left, right, just got screwed because of it.
I mean, if it's a World War II movie, the easiest way to fit in Tagarado is with the Japanese, because technically it's a Japanese company.
Yeah.
So, Proto-Tagarado, working with the Nazis. Why not?
So, if there were two things that you could say as takeaways, two definitive things, if you were just giving a quick hot take to somebody on whether or not they should watch the movie or check it out, two things you really liked, two things you really hated, if you could just boil it down to that, Katie, what would you say they were?
The acting and the writing, again, were phenomenal. The inability to fit the set pieces and the occasional attempt at a jump scare, not so much. It's very much if you go into your sci-fi and you want it to make all perfect logical sense, this is not the movie for you. But if you want to sit down and just have a grand old time and be able to turn your brain off and enjoy it, this is really good for that.
Megan, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely have to second Katie with the acting, because the acting was phenomenal. There were a couple performances that definitely moved me to tears. They were that good and that effective. Second good thing is, honestly, for all of this movie's flaws and faults, I absolutely adore its female characters.
Yes.
Every woman in this movie is and again, especially if you look at the original script and how not very, very many women there were, and how they treated sort of Hamilton and her place in the story, it wasn't great. So I really, really love that every single woman in this movie is well-rounded. 2 out of 3 of them are women of color. They're interesting, and even the one that ends up becoming our main antagonist, she's not evil, she's just desperate. And because her world has been pushed to the brink and feels like they can't afford the time and resources it would take to create another satellite, and all her friends are also dead. So even our so-called villain is not evil, just a desperate person that's been pushed to these extremes. So I really appreciate every single female character in this movie, and I haven't gotten a chance to see Annihilation yet, but it's just one of those things, by having those women be those characters without them being the woman, the one woman, or like the one girl who knows about things and is here to be the token chick. Like, it's really cool to see these leads treated like they would if they were also male, if they were male characters. It's basically treating them with the same kind of respect and importance as a lot of other sci-fis would treat their male characters. So I really appreciated that. That was great. As far as, negatives, definitely the having to bend over backwards to connect the dots. That's always troubling in a movie when you have to get out the yarn and the murder board to make it make sense. It's never a good sign. And then also and this is a little bit of a point of contention, I think. The scenes on Earth, though very well acted and very well executed, were all added in because of focus testing. The film didn't rely on its because of focus tests. The film didn't rely on its audience enough to be able to trust that what was going on Earth. The film needed to keep you updated on Earth, which sucked out a lot of the drama. And again, they were very well acted scenes, very well put together, but they were added in as an afterthought because of focus testing. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. In this case, I really felt like a good chunk of them distracted from the drama that was going on the space station. And at the end of the day, it very much signaled to me, yes, they're going to be able to get home. It's okay.
And to the Earth scenes, because we didn't address them so much, the found child was such a red herring sort of drop. Just found this kid, not from here. Oh, well, that's weird. Oh, we sent him home.
We found her.
Yeah, the end.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend about these, actually, and she brought up that it would have been so much more interesting, especially with the dimensional collisions, if this little girl had not been, what's her name, Molly, if they'd called her parents and her parents had been like, what are you talking about? Molly was never in the hospital. She's been at home with us this whole time.
Right.
So it's this girl that's shown up from another dimension or something going on, or we don't know. If we just had a little more dimensional collision in these scenes, and instead it was very much, meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Yeah.
And they were still well acted and still good character pieces. They were just also hilariously unnecessary.
And it felt like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that it felt like that spot was very specifically oriented to make you think of 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah.
Random. My friend.
Look, we have a bunker.
Exactly.
Aren't we great? Aren't we tied into our franchise?
How about you there, James? What are your 2 and 2?
So I would say on the positive, I think it's a redundant one to say that the acting, but it's 100% true. I really liked the characters. I liked figuring out their motivations as the plot went on. My partner and I both sat there going, "Oh, he was a bastard the whole time." No, I don't think he was. I think he was I think there's another him that's a bastard elsewhere. Trying to figure out their interpersonal relationships was super enjoyable. And if you're going to go in to it, sit down, just expect to eat popcorn. Don't overanalyze it because it clearly falls apart over sort of any heavy scrutiny. You've seen this movie before in about 7 other movies, but if you're in the mood for that movie, it's new.
Yeah. The acting, like you said, has been done to death. I still think the husband was fantastic in all of his scenes. Again,
I'm not complaining that there was more of him. He was great.
Yeah, Daniel Brühl is very much, like I said, becoming one of my guilty pleasure actors to watch. He's really good in everything that I've seen him in. The other good thing I'll say is I bought Cloverfield on DVD. I bought 10 Cloverfield Lane. Another positive is I didn't have to pay for this one because I think I would have been upset if I had. The negatives I kind of beat to death too. There were so many throwaway reactions that just felt, let's move on. I was really waiting for somebody to just be like, the Samuel L. Jackson character or the manic character that looks at everybody else and it's like, why is this not as much of a big deal to anybody else as it is to me that we just found this woman in the wall or that the ship just ate this dude's arm? Why is nobody else freaking out about this? it felt like it was too much of a level of suspension of disbelief just to get to the next plot point. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what Overlord brings to see if it clears anything up. Somehow I doubt it. But
I was gonna say, I feel like that's asking a lot.
Yeah, I think,
I don't think Overlord's going to have anything to do with us.
And it's probably
I'm okay
best
with that.
with these three movies now all being so drastically different, but with similar nods. We shouldn't expect it. I think now that we're 3 in, we understand that these movies are all they have similarities, but they are distinctly different, and there's no expectation whatsoever.
Yeah, it's very much an anthology.
Literally chaos.
Yeah.
Again, my biggest problem with treating it like an anthology is that if you're going to treat it like an anthology, things need to be a little bit more standalone, like 10 Cloverfield Lane was, because then you get into the trap that Cloverfield Paradox gets into, where it's trying too hard to connect, but then in other respects, not trying hard enough to adequately explain itself. And so you're just kind of met with a sort of a half-baked movie where half of it, again, made that effort to make the bridge, and the other half of it just sort of meh.
Yeah, my big concern, if they continue it to be a connected anthology movie, is that means that eventually they're going to want to, or the fans are going to scream for an answer, and we're going to get like the Matrix Architect or the Purgatory Room. Like, there's going to be an answer that fits, but it's hot garbage.
So a J.J. Abrams answer.
Right.
Cloverfield Purgatory.
Oh, nice.
I mean, give it enough time. Give it enough time.
We may need to slap a Lost spoiler warning on this podcast.
Oh, speaking of, oh my gosh, it's not necessarily confirmed yet, but you might be onto something with Cloverfield Purgatory there, Katie.
No.
What?
Because rumor has it, and again, check out the Hybrid Network on YouTube to sort of get the scoop on this. But rumor has it that they've already sort of worked on the following Cloverfield movie after Overlord. So the fifth one, which would actually sort of play around with the idea of purgatory or limbo. Starring Daisy Ridley, it would be about her. I would have to double check the plot synopsis that they gave, but it basically, long story short, is somebody she was in love with died, and the movie plays around with the idea of the afterlife. So you might not be wrong, Katie, in that it takes place in the Cloverfield Purgatory.
Ooh.
That could very well be a thing that is on the horizon for this movie franchise, or that could just be speculation. Again, these are
bless
rumors.
America.
These are rumors.
So the movie after Overlord is called The Cloverfield?
Ouch.
No? Nobody? That's
Ouch.
okay. They're not all-
No.
They
Oh,
can't all be winning.
The Crow, Cloverfield.
no, I gotcha. It's just not good.
Yeah. It's okay. It fits in with this podcast and this topic. We're okay.
It was a good try. It was a good try.
So that
but yeah, I don't. I was just gonna say, don't take my word for it necessarily. That's all rumor stuff. That could all just be nonsense that I just spewed out. So the next movie hasn't even come out yet. So I feel like it's a little too early to jump the gun on that one.
So that
Probably.
being said, where can the people of the interwebs find where they can listen to all things Katie and Megan?
You go first.
Oh, well, you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. You can also, when you want to hear us talk about horror movie things, you can check out our Twitter at silver_screams and subscribe to our YouTube page, all that fun stuff. Like us on Facebook too. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can follow me all over the social medias, as well as on YouTube and Twitch at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet. We're also doing a few shows for AfterBuzz. As of the time of this recording, we have a couple of episodes of Star Wars Rebels left. Voltron starts next week, and our Rooster Teeth reviews is weekly on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, if you have not seen the AfterBuzz shows that these fine ladies do, definitely check them out. It's kind of where I ended up, to coin a phrase, I guess, poorly, again, cut my teeth on Megan and Katie and a bunch of the other great AfterBuzz people. They do some great after shows. It's great connectivity with the people in the chat rooms and the fans, so definitely check them out on YouTube. If you are a fan of watching TV, I'm sure there is an after show that is associated with the show that you watch, so definitely check them out. Ladies, as always, it was a pleasure having you on the show. You guys are welcome on anytime. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this movie with us.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a blast.
Katie, I do have a question for you. Do you have any of the source material from your Cloverfield game? Just like any of the, or was it all homebrew?
It was a text-based RPG that used to live on LiveJournal before LiveJournal was quite literally bought out by Russia.
Yep. 100%. Okay, I know it was just a freeformer. Got it.
Yep, it's 10 years old at this point.
No judgment.
Yep.
None judgment. But thank you again for joining and hanging out and talking about the big hot buzz movie that started us off this year. Look forward to see what you guys do next. And whatever happens in the Cloverfield series. Damn it, Rob.
Oh. Yes! Stop trying to make fetch happen.
But anybody who's listening here, if you do not know where you can find us on all of the social media outlets, specifically somethingcast.com and the Facebooks, as well as Twitter at STSDcast. Or you can join up the Patreon, where you can get 2 extra pieces every month. That is on the weeks that we are not updating. The Patreon is updating. So please go there, and please, for the reasonable price of $2, can evaluate 3 times the cost. You can get our radio plays, as well as other reviews, and Something in History, which is our other little ditty that we've been rolling with. Rob, do you have anything else to add?
I'm good.
Then I think let's call this one a wrap. Thank you, ladies. I'm James Hatton.
I'm Podcast Rob.
We'll see you guys next time.
Boom!
Everybody lives on a street, in a city or a village or a town for what it's worth. And they're all inside a country which is part of a continent that sits upon a planet known as Earth. And the Earth is a ball full of oceans and some mountains which is out there spinning silently in space. And living on that Earth are the plants and the animals and also the entire human race. It's a great big universe and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney. It's big and black and inky and we are small and dinky. It's a big universe and we're not. And we're part of a vast interplanetary system stretching 700 billion miles long. With 9 planets and a sun, we think the Earth's the only one that has life on it, although we could be wrong. Across the interstellar voids are a billion asteroids, including meteors and Halley's Comet too. And there's over 50 moons floating out there like balloons in a panoramic trillion-mile view. And still it's all a speck amid 100 billion stars in a galaxy we call the Milky Way. It's 60,000 trillion miles from one end to the other, and still that's just a fraction of the way. 'Cause there's 100 billion galaxies that stretch across the sky, filled with constellations, planets, moons, and stars. And still the universe extends to a place that never ends, which is maybe just inside a little jar. It's a great big universe, and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney, though we don't know how we got here. We're an important part here. It's a big universe. It's